Are the bananas insensitive in the context of the book? Maybe. Hello. Hey, cheater. Hi, Victoria. Who cares? I'm sensing some angry vibes from chat. People angry about the book. Are you angry? Or just disappointed? Whenever I was in trouble, I didn't get in trouble much as a kid. But it was way worse for your parents to be disappointed than angry, right? More, and I never even started it. Silly Munchkin says, disappointed. I forced myself to read it. Maybe I have a different take than the rest of you. I finished it yesterday. Like the whole second half of the book. I started out reading and then I finished it on audiobook for transparency. Guys, I love the book. It was hard to read, but the ending felt worth it. Okay, I'll give you my very brief sense of it. I really did not enjoy reading the book. The further into it I got, the more I think I started to appreciate it and just sort of be okay with like what it was and what it was trying to do. And a lot of my initial disappointment was just wanting it to be something it wasn't, I think. I have 200 pages to go, but I'm not finishing anymore. I can't do it. I think it depends on the translation. I think my translation was fine. And it's such a famous book that I'm sure there's many translations. This is my favorite book ever. See, this is a super polarizing book. I guess that's the next question I should ask. Did you like the book? Over 70% of you here did not even read it. So for the 23% of you who read the book, if you just had to say thumbs up, thumbs down, did you like the book? This feels like English, like high school English where half the class didn't read. That's good. Do I have to start banning people from book club? Like we need a different tier of membership for people who know how to read? I read it in Spanish? Okay. Somebody's showing off to the teacher. Bentenos, man, this isn't a book you can summarize. Although I was thinking about this, it's not even like the very specific things that happen to people that really matter for a synopsis. Like 100 Years of Solitude is a story about a family over many generations in a fictional town of Macondo, and it is about how that town changes with modernity, and it's about how that family is stuck in a cycle of repeating the past, of being cursed to repeat but also forget the past before the end of before the last of their generation and the bloodline stops and the town sort of disappears back into nothingness. Is music too loud? So the novel is incredibly impressive in its scope. I think it's like 7 generations of the family. Kind of helps to have a family tree there. And it covers, a lot of relationships, a lot of, there's a civil war, there's the influence of industry coming to the town. It's obviously, I think it's very much inspired by the author Gabriel Garcia Marquez's own experience growing up in Colombia and a lot of the sort of internal strife and civil war. I think Encanto, is that Pixar? I think it's influenced by 100 Years of Solitude. That randomly popped up when I was Googling. So I know, like, one of the first things you'll hear about people, or what people will take away from this book, you'll hear a lot of people say that it was just really confusing, and it is. Did I pick it because of the bananas? No. I did not know about the bananas, or I did not know about references to chickpeas. What was I saying? Oh yeah, a lot of people will just think it's like a very confusing book because of it follows this family over many generations, and the tradition in the family is to just rename the the children of the next generation the exact same names as their parents. So there were definitely parts of the book where I'll admit I lost track of which generation of Aureliano we're talking about. And that's probably most people's experience, unless you're literally taking notes with the book or have like a family tree in front of you. But the further into it I got, the more I at least felt like that didn't even really matter, because one of like the main ideas of the book is that these subsequent generations really just embody the same characteristics as their forebears. So in some ways, it doesn't even really matter which generation. Yeah, it didn't seem also even that important to understand the generations. And I think like that's sort of what clicked to me when I was like a little more than halfway through the book. Just sort of ignoring that frustration of not being entirely sure like which version of this character. I stopped reading when the girl got her period and married the guy, and that one girl kept eating dirt. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff in this book. There's a lot of incest in this book as well. Wasn't necessarily expecting that. That is one of the things that repeats itself through the generations. Yeah, this book will seem very to most of you who haven't read this book. I don't know how to explain this in a way that doesn't seem crazy. So in addition to the names, the book is also a little confusing in how it plays with time, but I actually enjoyed that. I like when works of fiction are a little playful with time. So occasionally, I mean, some examples of that are easier than others, but it would just be, even the first line of the book, many years later when Colonel Aureliano is facing the firing squad, he would remember the time his father took him to see ice for the first time, something like that. There were these really like beautiful moments, sort of beautiful lines of prose punctuating the book that sort of completely transported you to different places. But even those, I felt a little. So here's my main criticism of the book, and I saw this in the Discord and people talking about it as well. Because the characters everything feels so fatalistic, as if their destiny is predetermined. Everything feels kind of disposable. And everything feels a little inconsequential for that reason. So, even that first line of when he's facing the firing squad, he would be taken back in his memory to the moment with his father. That feels like that could be a really beautiful thing that makes you feel a nostalgia for something that you don't even understand, right? But it feels like there's something heavy and emotional about that. But ultimately, you don't feel any of that with any of the characters, I don't think. So a lot of those moments that could be really beautiful and meaningful feel like they lack the weight. It was hard to get attached to characters. I agree. And if what you're looking for in fiction is a character study, character development, a story that's going to tell you something about humanity or your own humanity, I actually don't think this is the book for you. The idea of like you just being, the idea of you being to some extent trapped to repeat the history of your parents, I think that's a really powerful and relatable idea. But again, it just felt like it landed so... because it felt like there's no free will here or something, or because it doesn't land the same way when you don't feel like the characters are anything but disposable. And like, I'm not even talking about the magical realism yet, but like even the way they would describe, you know, there'd be throwaway lines or anecdotes like this woman, immiserated in a poor family, had to prostitute herself to make money. And one day she went home and stuck her hand in an oven and burned it. And then for the rest of her life, people thought she smelled like ashes. And like that would just be like a cute line just thrown in there. And then like, let's just forget about that. Like that's not like a traumatic, like heavy thing. That's just something that happened. Let's move on. Like, did anyone else have this impression of how like casual or cavalier the book felt about describing these like immense tragedies happening not just to this family but everyone involved? How old is this book? It won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982. So was it written in the 60s or 70s maybe? Where are you? When were you first written? 67, someone in the chat says. Does that line up with mine? When's the first copyright? So I didn't really refer back to this, but that's chronology. Well, that's author's life and then literary context. My book has a chronology and a family tree, which I didn't really use, but it's indicative that you might need this if you're really trying to follow things closely. People seem to agree on 1967. Yeah, they just breeze through tragedy. I do want to talk about the magical realism, because that's the other like very... This book is very well known for being a seminal example of the genre, I guess you would say, of magical realism. So this is the idea that... Here, I looked up some sort of description of it. When marvelous and impossible events occur in what otherwise purports to be a realistic narrative. So like a good example of that is at one point you have this... what was her name? There's a character that just sort of exists to be like a symbol, to be symbolic of just of beauty and innocence. And like halfway through the book, it just describes that she just floats away into the sky in front of everyone. Remedios the beauty. Yeah? And I think it's a metaphor, or I think it's supposed to symbolize like... a certain corruption of innocence that comes with the town's industrialization or modernization. As if like she didn't belong to that world anymore. So yeah, like Dua Lipa, she just levitates. She just levitates away. Just like, she's beautiful like Dua Lipa too. Just pretend this character is Dua Lipa. So this whole family are just sitting around, hanging laundry or something, and Dua Lipa's there, and Dua Lipa just floats away into the sky. I found it interesting, and it's beautifully written, but I guess my question for any of you who've read other books with this sort of magical realism element, is it normal, or is the idea that no one really reacts to the magic happening as if it's anything other than mundane? Because, like, it's an interesting idea that they just treat this as if that is just magical things can happen in the context of this world. But there's also, like, this is a person they knew and cared about just floats away into the sky. And it's treated as if, like, that's not something anyone feels any sort of way about. So, like, yeah, so I think the idea is that's supposed to be normal, but it being normal doesn't change the fact that, like, a character that people have a human relationship with just disappears. Like, it's one thing if that magic expresses, like, there's a really fun section of the book early on where everyone loses the ability to sleep. And as they all have this sickness of insomnia, they start forgetting things and forgetting their history. And obviously that's also sort of symbolic of how as society progresses, you forget things like your traditions or ancestors. So that was like, that's an interesting idea of inserting a level of magic in a I thought that was an interesting example of magical realism, let's say. But to have someone just float away into the sky like a balloon and no one really cares, that's just kind of stupid, I think. Even if it's beautifully written and, like, I understand the symbolism of it. There was grieving for Remedios. Was there? Because everything just felt, I don't know. Felt like people were constantly dying and burning. Like, did people care about each other in this book? Like, there was the adopted daughter, the girl who showed up eating dirt, like we referenced recently. She grows up, she marries one of the sons, they die. At one point in the book, like, they just forget she exists. And then, like, I think decades later, they're like, oh, she's just a hermit now in a house. And it's like, that was your family. What is going on in this? No one cares about each other in this book. Yeah, Rebecca. Yeah, what is going on here? Also, I do have to say, like, actually, I'm interested to hear your take on this, because maybe I'm being a little too simplistic. It did feel like the book was trying to romanticize the past as if, like, any sort of progress in the society represented something bad, like a breakage or forgetfulness of history and tradition. But it almost implies, like, the town and the family exists in some sort of idyllic paradise at the beginning, when I didn't really get that impression at all. Like, I guess you don't have the government coming in and telling them how color they can paint their houses, and you don't have the sort of civil war, and, you know, men being sent to die for, like, meaningless political disputes. Like, I understand. I think it did an effective job of showing how those things complicated their lives. But even the sort of life they were living at the beginning also didn't seem like some paradise. So maybe the lesson isn't like, oh, look how much better and simpler times were. Maybe it's just everything sucks all the time. There was still hope, though. Hope for what? A lot of the sort of discovery and science that led to the progress of the town was sort of driven by the patriarch of the family, the original Jose. This song's inappropriate. I just looked up Spanish music. Is that a happy birthday song? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, my TLDR though, I think is I don't think I'd want to read this book again. And I certainly didn't enjoy reading it, but I'm glad I have an appreciation for it that I didn't think I would have. Like, when I was halfway through, I was telling Christine, like, I think this is just a bad book. I don't understand why people like it so much. So would I recommend it? I mean, it depends how much time you have on your hands. Why do I think it's well liked? I think at least part of it is I think it is a story representing a culture of people who aren't represented very well in classical literature. So I think there's certain aspects of the book that just, without that sort of social context, I don't think. And it's just, like, I think the only work of fiction that is sold better in Spanish is the Bible. Or at least the author, Garcia Marquez, I think is the best-selling author, Spanish language author. Someone can fact check me on that. You know, apparently, I wonder if there's a lot of missing cultural context or it's just lost in translation. Read the Bible next. That could be an interesting book club book. The Bible. Yeah, best Spanish language author after God himself. God herself, I think, though. It did win a Nobel Prize. A lot of smart people seem to like this book a lot. I think it's sort of singular. I've never read anything like it. I love reading mythology. I guess one way of looking at this book is it does feel a little biblical. There's definitely some allegories there. And it does read almost like a fairy tale in a weird sort of way. It's all connected. Yes. That's the beauty of book 10, no exposure to stuff we'd never read otherwise. What's the next book? The next book is The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. So, how long are we? A little over 300 pages, but this is a very recent release. When did this come out? I think last year? We've been jumping around from contemporary to classic here. Yeah, 2022. When did book club start? We started in January. What have we read so far? Chat, remind me. We started with Fahrenheit 451 in January. Then we read The Picture of Dorian Gray in February. Then we read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin in March. April was 100 Years of Solitude. And May will be The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. Probably book club for probably June 4th. Christine's Menchie Gang streams keep falling on the last Sunday of the month, so I feel like we're just going to be pushed to the first week of the following month. What's Candy House about? Is there a synopsis here? I prefer not to know much about the books going in, so I don't know. The Candy House opens with the staggeringly brilliant Bix Booten, a tech demigod on a first-name basis with the world. Bix is 40 with 4 kids, restless, desperate for a new idea when he stumbles into a conversation group. Mostly Columbia professors, one of whom is experimenting with externalizing memory It's 2010. Within a decade, Bix's new technology, Own Your Unconscious, which allows you to access every memory you've ever had and to share your own in exchange for access to memories of others, has seduced multitudes, but not everyone. I think I'll end it there. So it's like, what if you could upload your memories to and use that as currency on social media? So definitely a pretty big departure from, people killing each other and people making chickpeas, civil wars, banana plantations. Isn't Netflix planning a 100 Years of Solitude movie? This is what I've heard. I really struggle to see how it could be adapted into a movie or series. And I'm pretty sure the author, he had died some time ago. I know at one point he had expressed that he didn't want to see that happen, but I think it is his children involved in it. And I mean, things have changed a lot in the last 20 years in terms of how things can be adapted, I think. Very excited for Simply to play What Remains of Edith Finch. It's one of my favorite games and curious to hear your take on the similarities to the book. So my assumption without knowing anything about Edith Finch, or maybe I had looked into it at one point, but I'm assuming it just means it's the story of a family where it feels like history is doomed to repeat itself or the family is stuck in some sort of tragic cycle. Kids are digging up the gold statues, yeah. That's a pretty depressing... Man, the end of this book was quite depressing, wasn't it? Like, one of the last sons of the family is killed by these children. Like, they just drown him to take his gold coins. And then the other one, just like, his wife dies in childbirth and then he just forgets about the baby. It's a pretty fucked up book. This book, in my opinion, is a bad example of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's work. The General in his Labyrinth is a much better book from what I recall. Also nowhere near as convoluted. I mean, he also has, Love in the Time of Cholera? He's got a few famous works. I mean, this is the book people point to as his sort of masterpiece. And I should say, masterpiece probably is the right word for it. Like, not many people have the capacity to produce something like this. So, like, even if you didn't like it, I don't think there's any denying it's incredibly impressive. I cannot write a book. I could not write a book. It's a much more... I was always way too self-conscious. Cowardly. Like, I guess the closest I ever was to an artist was like a performer of music, right? But there's such a huge difference between being able to perform music or art and to be able to write it or compose it or come up with something yourself. Because that just takes like an enormous amount of vulnerability, I think. Every YouTuber can do a book. Yeah, but those books don't count. And most of the time, they're not even written by the YouTuber. If Jake Paul can write a book, you can write a book. It's kind of I think it was an old Christopher Hitchens line. A sort of retort to this, like, there's this expression, everybody has a book in them. But for most people, that's where it should stay. Everybody has a book inside them. But for most people, that's probably a terrible book that no one else wants to read. I will have to take a look at our list the rest of the way, though, to see if we need to mix it up tonally. Sort of open our horizons a little bit. Like, when I picked that list early on, it was very much focused on just some classics and then just some very well-known contemporary examples. But I'd be willing to sort of branch out. Maybe even some nonfiction at some point. Kurt Vonnegut. I know I mentioned Vonnegut at one point, and people keep reminding me of that because I've never read any Vonnegut, or it's been so long that I can't ever remember. I'm excited for Jurassic. I threw Jurassic Park in there for later. I also wanted to read some horror in the fall. You know what I just saw? Christine and I watched the first episode of this new Apple show that's based on a book, and it made me want to read the book. The show is called Silo. I don't know if that's what the book was called. Wool? Is it called Wool? But I feel like if we watch the show, that'll probably ruin the book. Because it's a book that's sort of a mystery. Is there any nonfiction you like to read? There is. I read nonfiction a lot, but I guess in the form of long-term form journalism and stuff like that, more so than nonfiction books these days. But yeah, there's definitely, it's so different though, eh? People don't really have book clubs for nonfiction, do they? If Shrek was a book, could we get you to read it? No promises. Throw in a self-help book. Biographies are fun. Maybe a way of easing into it would be biographies. I really want to. So my favorite author of all time is Vladimir Nabokov. I think I bring this up every book club. And he wrote something that is like sort of loosely an autobiography, but also has a lot of the sort of artistic flourish of his fictional writing. I think it's called Speak Memory. I've never read that, and I would like to. Do I like Gabriel Garcia Marquez? I mean, I don't know him. Do you mean, do I like his writing? I would only be basing it off this book. Yeah, I did like the style of the writing. My biggest hang-up was how sort of fatalistic and inconsequential everything felt in a way that made me not really care about any of the people. What do you mean you don't know him? I don't presume to know an author because I've read one of their books, you know? Also, does anything exist outside of the text? We could read Taylor Swift's memoir if the rumor is true that it comes out in July. I saw that rumor as well. I mean, I'm sure she's lived a lot of life, but it's also pretty strange to release a memoir when you're... Is she my age? Or not even that old? How old is Taylor Swift? Like 30 years old? I have the Jeanette McCurdy book. I'm currently reading it. Yeah, if I hadn't lost my mom recently, I probably would have, or not recent. Yeah, that book might be weird for me, but I do want to read that book. Taylor Swift's 33. How old am I? Am I 34? Christine, how old am I? Am I 35? 35, right? Fuck. How did that happen? Okay, boomer. You know what I need to do? I need to get my Matt's girlfriend partner. Girlfriend sounds like a weird word when you're in your 30s. I don't know. The woman my brother is dating has also been reading these book club books. She's a big reader. I think I'm gonna have to convince her to come on here, so it's not just me rambling. The Paris Hilton book is very good. I don't know why I have trouble believing that. You'll behave. You have to promise to behave, you know? When non-YouTube people step into this universe, they don't know what to expect. You gotta have a little chill. Any books for babies you want to read? Like how to take your baby on a plane sort of book? How to travel with a baby? When to leave your baby at home? How do you feel about not finishing a book? I'm in an in real life book club and 50 pages in the book is making me mad. Should I finish? I'm not one of those people who's going to say, like, you should finish a book no matter what, just for the sake of it. But in practice, I have been one of those people who has trouble not finishing a book once I start. Like Atlas Shrugged. The worst book I've ever read is still Atlas Shrugged. And I knew how much I didn't like it. Maybe, you know, like a couple hundred pages into it. And that is a long book. But part of the motivation there was if I was ever in a conversation with someone who used that book to inform their sort of like political outlook on life, I wanted to be able to say I actually read the book and telling them how much I thought it was a total unfair characterization of people. My logic is reading should be for enjoyment. If you're not enjoying it, it's okay to put it down. But that's where I think it comes back with this book. Like, I couldn't say I enjoyed reading this book, but at the end of the day, I'm glad I read it, and I have an appreciation for what it is and what it was trying to do. If you're only ever going to read things that are giving you that constant gratification, you know, are you leaving any room for reading something that's sort of challenging and isn't just, you know, the literary equivalent of junk food, of constantly making you feel good and happy? And I think for anyone, I think it's more just a balance of those things, you know, because if a book is just an absolute, like dragging yourself through shards of glass to read it, then yeah, that I wouldn't recommend continuing reading that book. But I don't think your standard should be that it's just easy or fun necessarily. Would you read any Dan Brown books? Was that the, what was that Tom Hanks movie they turned it into? Fuck, what's that called? National Treasure? That's the Nicolas Cage one. Da Vinci Code. I read the Da Vinci Code. Is that Dan Brown? Can you announce the next book on your YouTube feed? Yeah, I should post the schedule on the... I'll post it on the community tab with updated dates. But yeah, the next book is The Candy House by Jennifer Egan. And we're probably looking at... Can't pull up a calendar here for some reason. June 4th? Yeah, 4 weeks from now. Thank you, Maria. I do want to do different genres. Has anyone started Candy House? Can we submit book suggestions somewhere? As of right now, Discord would be the only place to do that, but if I make that community post, I think, yeah, if you can leave comments under there. I just got here, what did we rate the book? This isn't a book you can just... I don't know, 4 stars. It doesn't feel like the book you can sort of just reduce to a rating. Not Candy House, but I started Jennifer Egan's earlier book, Goon Squad, to prepare. Yeah, a lot of people see this. I don't think this is literally a sequel. Or is it? Does it occur in the same universe? Goon Squad is Egan's most famous book, I think. I think she won a Pulitzer for the Goon Squad. Out of the 4 books so far, which is your fave? Probably Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. That story at its core is about the kind of love you can have for a friend in a platonic way, and how much that person can mean to you and shape your life. And that resonated with me a lot. I had my issues with that book too. Some things about it felt very contrived to me, in a young adult fiction sort of way. But I thought there was a lot of humanity in the relationship between the 2 protagonists of that book. I think 100 Years of Solitude is... I was going to say objectively, but like... by most people's standards, it is the best book that we've had in book club. It's probably the best written book. I guess it depends what you're looking for, right? Like, if you're looking for a story about that helps you understand your own place in this world, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is a much more grounded example of that. Like, 100 Years of Solitude is something, though, that, well, the characters may have felt disposable, but the way I sort of feel about the book isn't. I feel like it's something that's just going to sort of pop into my head sometimes. That theme, I wonder if I would be interested in other books that sort of explore that theme of having the sort of handcuffs of being doomed to repeat the history of your parents, your family. I find that a really interesting idea. It's funny how you called it a bad book just a couple days ago. When I was like was that yesterday? I was being a little cheeky monkey, but it was kind of just like, it really is not an enjoyable book to get through. Time for some Jump King. I want to see where you made it to off stream. I beat Babe of the Heavens. Just so you know. It took just under 11 hours. Why did you beat it without us? You know how I beat it? When I was listening to like the last 5 hours of the audiobook last night, I played Jump King at the same time. Is there a VOD? So after I beat it in 11 hours, what's always fun with, this isn't a book club anymore, I guess it's Jump King talk. Do 2 awful things make a great thing. I do wonder if my appreciation for the end of the book was at all influenced by the fact that I did it while I was beating a video game I enjoy. Audiobook on normal speed, I may have upped it a couple notches. Anyway, something really interesting about Jump King is the first playthrough is always the hardest but most satisfying. And so it took 11 hours. Immediately after, I just started again and I beat it under an hour. And I recorded that, actually. Maybe I could just pull that up. Should I show you? Do you want to see the end? I can share my screen. Oh wait, that's the wrong recording. What's the date today? It's the 6th. Oh, you want to see what happens after space? Here, let me take you through, because this is actually... Okay, here's space. Here's the end of the space part. So this is the last screen of space. Oh. I wonder if it'd be easier for me just to play. Just show you. It'd take at least half an hour, though. So this was a real block for me. Getting through the... Once I got through the space part, I found I got... Yeah. So this is limbo, where the blocks keep disappearing and reappearing. This section's really fun. Wait, you listened to the audio version of 100 Years of Solitude? I read like the first 5 chapters, and then I switched over to an audiobook, yeah. I think I really struggled through this section on this playthrough. This is really hard because right before this, you're in like the low gravity section. So all of a sudden with gravity back to normal, it's really hard to just adjust on the fly. That's cheating. Audiobooks are cheating. I do think that experiencing a book through listening to it is different than reading it, if that's what you mean by cheating. I need to read the whole book again to feel the pain of it. Okay, because you say so, Maria. Maybe one day. I do have a little suspicion this is one of those books that might just sort of creep back into my brain at some point. Would you tell a blind person an audiobook is cheating? I mean, blind people have ways of reading. Right? Braille? Although that's an interesting question, is the way I think reading is different than listening to someone else read a book, because just ingesting the words makes it more of a mental exercise for you to sort of play it out in your head differently. But so I see the equivalent, I assume Braille would do this, a similar thing. But an audiobook is accessible for lots of people who can't read otherwise. Yeah, sure. I don't think anyone's denying that, just it is a different experience than just interpreting words on a page. All right, so that's how you get out of limbo. Heavenly Ruin. This section took a while. I'm not going to play through the whole thing because I kept falling, even on this run. But this is how you get out of it. The art, this is the most beautiful Jump King that I think's been made. Even more than the originals. It's just weird to call it cheating. Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't use that word. You're making me just want to play this again. Although I will say, because I played it so long yesterday, my left hand, my thumb in particular, felt kind of like locked or a little strained today. You need to do this on stream so we can enjoy the background in real time. You're just trying to trick me into... I wonder how quickly I could get. Here, you tricked me. We're cheating. Let's see. Let's see how far I can get in like let's see if I can get to the end in half an hour. Book club, more like Jump King. What happened to book club? It's only been 30 minutes. I said everything I wanted to say. Did you have anything else to say, Mac? Yeah, also it's been an hour. That was Menchie. Menchie's doing weird things back here. No, come on. That's a hard jump. The shortcut's just to go left here. Let's see if it works. Yep. No, come on. Things definitely get harder at the cats. I miss the Last of Us streams. I do still want to play The Last of Us 2 with Christine. Just not sure when to do that. I also want to play... I never played the first Jedi Fallen Order game. Like the sequel just came out. So I was wondering if I could play the first one and then maybe the second after. And Red Dead Redemption 2 came up on our last stream. So that would give us something different to play. That would take forever. What, Red Dead? Yeah, that might be a tough one for stream. All right, space. Space is the place. Can you hear the game at all, by the way? That's a Shrek game? What's a Shrek game? Red Dead Redemption? There's no audio at all. It's very quiet. Here, I'll turn it up. Just my key. I can hear your keyboard. Yes. Is there still no game audio? Should be. No, come on. You can hear now? This section was the biggest barrier in the game for me. See, like it's so easy just to go back to the cat section here. And this jump is hard. Fuck. Brutal. See? All the way down. This is a really punishing section. Can you get the Shrek game on PC? Or was that like PS2 only? Ooh. Fuck. No. I at least want to get to Limbo. I want to show you Limbo. Too far. Fuck. I'm falling apart here. There we go. So now gravity's back to normal. So after all that low gravity, you have to remember what normal jumps are like. Short. I was short on that jump. Fuck. Where am I? All right, there's an invisible block to the right. Okay. No, come on, come on, come on, land. Come on, no. It's wild how it takes you 10 hours to first clear it, and then you can... Yeah, I know. Ooh, that was close. Alright, and this is the final climb. Nope. No, all the way down. Fuck. Alright, I don't know if I'm beating this. I need to end stream. Just hard. It's hard to stop, you know? Just falling to the left here is brutal. That was a slip up. Okay. Come on. That was so close. Okay. You get the idea. That's kind of how you beat the game. All right. Thanks for coming to Bentendo. Booktendo. Candy House. Next time. See you tomorrow? What should we do tomorrow? Throw bricks at people? New Fall Guys is New Fall Guys next week? Can you bake something Claire Saffitz would make? I do have a pineapple in the kitchen. Don't know what to do with it. New Fall Guys on the 10th? Okay, so we'll do something different tomorrow. Okay, thanks for hanging out. Next time, I expect more of you to read the book. How about that? How about that? You know, it's a book club. It's not a listen to other people talk about reading club, right? Nah, Kim. No, nope. I read it. Thank you, silly munchkins. Okay. Ouija board tomorrow? Yeah, okay, tomorrow on tomorrow's stream, we're going to play with a Ouija board. All right, thanks so much for watching. We'll see y'all later. Bye.